Ethan, would you suggest the Job Guide 360 guide for candidates getting ready for interviews?
Yes, without a doubt. It is well structured and makes preparation straightforward.
Okay, let's unpack this. We are diving deep today into the critical role of the maintenance manager. And more specifically, what really separates an average candidate from a top-tier performer in that interview room. This is a role where, let's be honest, a few small failures can end up costing a company millions. So yeah, the interview questions, they're designed to be pretty tough. Our mission today is basically to give you the shortcut. We are deconstructing the essential knowledge, the skills, the experience that hiring managers are really looking for. We're going beyond just like the technical checklist to explore the strategic thinking and the leadership depth needed for this really crucial operational role.
And it's interesting, whether you're aiming for this role or maybe you're looking to hire someone for it, the goals for a successful interview outcome, they're remarkably consistent. We found, really, 3 core areas that absolutely must be nailed down. First, the candidate has to demonstrate not just knowledge, but extensive applied experience in maintenance operations, real-world stuff. Second, they've got to showcase strong, empathetic leadership and communication skills. That's key. And third, perhaps most critically now, in the modern industrial landscape, they must present a clear track record. Proven success in implementing preventative maintenance programs, the kind that truly improve equipment uptime and, crucially, slash those downtime costs.
Right. So we're framing this discussion as, you could say, your definitive guide. It's the strategic playbook. It's not just about knowing how to fix a pump when it fails. It's about proving you can manage an entire asset lifecycle, often under immense financial and safety pressure. Okay, let's start with that pressure cooker situation. The most critical strategic challenge we see popping up in these situational questions. It immediately confronts the candidate with this need. This shift from react, just fixing things when they break, to proactive maintenance. This is where companies either stabilize or they really spiral out of control. Yeah, look at this specific scenario identified in the source material. This is such a classic interview challenge. Imagine you walk in day one and you're tasked with reducing overall maintenance costs by 10% in the next quarter. But you immediately realize that 70% of your current team's time, their labor hours, their downtime costs, it's all spent on reactive maintenance. That's 70% just firefighting.
Exactly. And what's fascinating here is that this question, it's almost a trap disguised as just a financial target. Anyone can promise a 10% cut, right? But a top-tier manager, they understand you cannot sustainably cut costs until you shrink that huge 70% reactive figure. Trying to just cut costs while you're still deep in that chaos, that just leads to deferred maintenance, pushing problems down the road, and eventually catastrophic failure.
So the key is they have to articulate the plan. How do you actually fund that transition to proactive maintenance? Because that often requires upfront investment, maybe in tech or training. How do you do that when you've already been told to slash the budget by 10%? That seems contradictory.
Precisely. It tests their strategic thinking right there. They need to show that they're fluent in the language of predictive maintenance, not just preventative. They need to talk about using tools like, say, vibration analysis, maybe thermal imaging, or even advanced oil sampling, things that help identify impending failures weeks, maybe even months in advance, rather than just waiting for the big, expensive breakdown. The plan must prioritize shifting work to schedule planned maintenance over just constant emergency work. They have to explain how reducing that 70% figure, even just a bit to start, actually unlocks the savings needed to hit that 10% target in a way that lasts.
Okay, so that immediately tests strategic thinking under, intense financial and operational pressure. But that strategic thinking, it needs to hold up under actual physical crisis too, right? What happens when the best laid plan goes sideways? We see these critical questions about handling, say, a major breakdown of a really high-value critical production asset. And the interviewer isn't just listening for, I'd fix it fast. No, they want to hear about prioritization. How do you decide which repair comes first? Is this production line more critical than that one right now? They want to hear about the rapid but smart allocation of your limited resources, people, parts, time. And, maybe most importantly, the established methods for making absolutely sure safety protocols are followed to the letter, even during that high-stress emergency.
Right. And the complexity, it moves beyond just simple crisis response. It goes into deep troubleshooting. Candidates have got to be able to describe how they would approach a tricky technical issue where maybe the first fix didn't work, or where there just isn't an obvious solution in sight. This is where they need to provide a concrete, measurable example. Talk about resolving a significant problem's root cause, not just the symptom.
Okay, wait. If they're talking about a piece of equipment that keeps failing, what does a top-tier candidate look for beyond just, the broken part itself?
Good question. They look for the systemic connection, the bigger picture. For instance, if a specific pump fails repeatedly, the average answer is, well, I'd fix the pump again. The top-tier answer digs deeper. Why is it failing? Is it an operational issue? Maybe it's being run too hard outside its specs. Is it an external factor? Maybe the environment is causing unusual corrosion. Or is the initial design specification itself just wrong for the application? They might tell a story, perhaps, about tracing repeated pump failures back to something unexpected, like a systemic vibration issue in the foundation it sits on, or maybe even a poorly calibrated sensor upstream giving bad data.
Oh, that makes sense. Looking for the root cause, not just the symptom. And speaking of systemic issues, the sources also identify this scenario where there's a sudden uptick in malfunctions, but it's across various different types of equipment, not just one machine acting up. The manager needs to figure out the single root cause affecting the whole system.
Yes, that's where you prove you're more of a detective, not just a mechanic, right? You have to ask those system-level questions. Is the quality of the lubricating oil suddenly poor across all machines using it? Was there maybe a recent power surge or fluctuation that affected sensitive sensors system-wide? Did a new batch of cheaper, maybe substandard consumables get introduced recently? If we connect this all back to you, the listener, these kinds of situational questions, they test not just technical skill, but really the ability to manage risk, manage resources, and perform effective root cause analysis, often under extreme pressure. It's about seeing the entire forest, the whole system, not just the individual trees or components.
That pressure to manage risk and resources, especially when it's chaos, it leads us really naturally into the next crucial category. Soft skills. It's easy to get kind of obsessed with the gear ratios and the sensor data, but maintenance management is, fundamentally, it's a people leadership role, first and foremost.
Oh, absolutely critical, because ultimately, team effectiveness dictates machine uptime. Your people keep things running. So the soft skills questions, they dive pretty deep into team dynamics. For instance, how would the candidate handle conflicts within the maintenance team? Especially when those conflicts are about differing technical opinions, How best to solve a tricky problem? You might have one engineer pushing hard for let's say, a complex digital upgrade, while another senior technician insists on a simpler, maybe cheaper, purely mechanical fix. How does the manager step in, facilitate a resolution that actually gets the job done safely, efficiently, and ideally keeps the team cohesive?
Yeah, that takes real diplomacy, but also technical authority, right? You need both. And then there's that classic management challenge, handling underperformance. How does the manager deal with a team member who is, consistently missing goals, falling behind on deadlines, even after they've had multiple coaching sessions? The answer here really needs to show a structured, professional, but also human approach.
Absolutely. They need to demonstrate how they would first document the performance issue clearly and objectively. Then, what targeted training or maybe additional resources they would provide. Is it a skill gap, a motivation issue? And critically, how they would use clear, empathetic communication to try and motivate and actively improve that employee's performance trajectory. It's about building capability, yes, but it's also about holding people to professional standards, ensuring accountability. The best answers often detail the specific steps taken to sort of preserve the relationship while still improving the outcome.
And that communication piece, it isn't just internal within the team, is it? It's often upward to management or outward to other departments. Candidates need to describe a situation where they had to communicate really complex technical information, like why is the main production line down again, and when exactly will it be back up, to someone like a non-technical executive or maybe the stressed out sales team. How do you simplify that technical jargon without sounding patronizing? How do you approach that challenge successfully, translating, complex equipment failure into terms they understand, like dollars lost and delivery schedules missed?
That's really the management balance test in action. You have to be bilingual in a sense. You have to translate something like harmonic resonance in the primary drive shaft bearing into, look, the core component of this critical machine is basically about to tear itself apart. We need 4 hours of controlled downtime starting immediately, or we risk losing 2 weeks of production. Yeah. They want to see that the manager can speak the language of engineering and the language of finance and operations fluently.
And in a field that's pretty much defined by constant change, new tech, and unexpected failures, flexibility has got to be paramount. Interviewers will definitely want to hear about a time the candidate had to pivot completely, maybe adapt to a brand new technical situation, a new piece of equipment they weren't familiar with, or perhaps try a completely different approach to solve a really persistent, nagging problem. Showcasing that adaptability is vital because, yesterday's perfect fix is often today's outdated procedure, right?
Ultimately, the manager has to walk that tightrope, just like you said. They must show how they balance that inherent immediate need for efficiency and productivity, get the plant running, keep it running right now, with the equally important need to maintain a positive, highly engaged, and crucially safe work environment for their team. That fusion of speed, output, safety, and culture, that's where real operational leadership lives.
Okay, moving now to the practical evidence side of things. Section 3 focuses on the role-specific questions and often uses the STAR method. This is where we shift from talking about hypothetical plans to demanding concrete, factual proof of past success. Show me the receipts, basically.
Exactly. We need to see action and, more importantly, results. A major focus here is often strategic resource management. The question might be asked very directly. What steps would you take to prioritize maintenance tasks, not when you have all the resources in the world, but specifically when you're faced with limited staffing or a tight budget or just not enough time? This, again, just hammers home that need for efficient allocation and smart risk-based planning. What gets fixed first and why?
And speaking of efficiency, well, you simply cannot be a modern maintenance manager without being fluent in technology integration. It's table stakes now. We're talking about CMMS, computerized maintenance management systems, and probably other critical maintenance software too. They need to prove not just that they know the acronym, but real experience utilizing these tools effectively.
Precisely. Knowing what CMMS stands for isn't enough. The best answers explain how they actually leveraged CMMS data. Specifically, things like work order history, failure codes, asset performance tracking. How did they use that data to make smarter strategic decisions? For example, did they use the CMMS data to build a business case justifying capital expenditure on a new machine because the repair history clearly showed diminishing returns on fixing the old one again and again? Or maybe they used it to redefine the entire preventive maintenance schedule, basing it on actual asset usage data from the system rather than just generic manufacturer recommendations. It's about using the data proactively to drive predictive actions, not just, logging complaints after the fact.
Right, using data for intelligence. That data-driven proof then links directly into how they manage large-scale change or projects. The candidate absolutely must be able to describe a time they managed a major maintenance project. It could be an overhaul, an upgrade, an installation. They need to detail the planning phase, how they coordinated resources, the scheduling intricacies, and the execution steps they took to ensure it was completed on time, on budget, and crucially, with minimal disruption or downtime to the rest of the operation.
And this is exactly where the structure of the STAR method becomes the candidate's, kind of their secret weapon. It ensures they provide that structured, evidence-based storytelling that hiring managers are trained to listen for. It forces clarity and, most importantly, impact.
Yeah, the structure itself is simple, but it's so effective. You start with the ST, the situation or the task you were faced with. For example, I inherited a facility that had basically zero preventative maintenance schedule and was suffering from excessive, costly, catastrophic failures. That sets the scene. Then comes the A, the action. What specific, quantifiable steps did you personally take? So I implemented a full asset criticality ranking system, and then I prioritized implementing lubrication analysis and vibration monitoring, focusing first on the top 20% most critical assets.
And finally, and this is the clincher, the R, the result, what was the measurable outcome of your actions? This must focus on metrics the business actually cares about. Okay, so within 6 months, we reduced those catastrophic downtime events by 45%, and we decreased our emergency overtime costs by about $50,000 annually. See, that storytelling structure ensures the hiring manager hears quantifiable impact, not just, I work really hard.
Definitely. And the key themes explored through these STAR questions, really, regardless of the specific scenario they throw at you, they consistently focus on a few core things. Overcoming some kind of major maintenance challenge, successfully developing and implementing a new strategic plan or process, and of course providing clear evidence of how they specifically improved efficiency, reduced maintenance costs, or ensured better compliance with safety regulations and procedures within their department. The story absolutely has to show tangible impact.
So just to summarize the key knowledge we've kind of unpacked today, the modern maintenance manager role, it's really a complex synthesis. It's multifaceted. It demands that financial accountability remember that challenging 10% cost reduction target, right alongside stringent safety compliance. No compromises there. It mandates technological fluency, especially with tools like CMMS for driving data-driven intelligence. And maybe above all, it requires strategic leadership. Someone capable of driving that critical shift away from that 70% reactive chaos towards truly proactive, predictive asset management.
Yeah, this deep dive really shows you that whether you are the one hiring for this critical role or you're applying for it yourself, The goal is crystal clear. You need to demonstrate a systematic, proactive approach to managing assets, and you need to frame it with strong, evidence-based storytelling using that highly effective STAR approach. It's about positioning yourself or finding someone who is an operational leader who genuinely views maintenance as a strategic lever for profitability and reliability, not just, an unavoidable cost center. But let's leave you with one final thought to consider, building on that strategic nature of the job we've been talking about. Beyond just nailing these immediate operational and leadership questions in the interview, what current, maybe broader industry trend should the really successful maintenance manager be actively incorporating into their planning right now to sort of future-proof their operations? Think about it. You need to maintain the physical assets, sure, but you also need to maintain the team that maintains the assets. If some sources out there are talking about things like social recruiting, new recruitment software, AI in hiring, how should a manager who's responsible for keeping physical machines running start leveraging these newer talent sourcing methods? How do they use them to build a stronger, maybe more diverse team? A team capable of handling the increasingly complex IoT sensors, the predictive analytics systems, all the tech that defines modern industrial operations. That feels like the next level of strategic thinking you should probably be exploring. Something to chew on.